happen though when I'm on, when we're all on.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, the fuck? I like drinking whiskey.
Right? So why collaboration? What was your inspiration to put together this album?
Well, I always grew up listening to like live bands and complete bands putting out albums and CDs, and I even had a chance to be part of a couple of bands. And so when I got to the point where I wanted to put out my own music, I knew for sure that I wanted to have a band. I wanted to have that chemistry between people, all putting in ideas, making it happen together.
So how long did it take to create collaboration and bring the band fully together as one in the same element?
Well, the idea came up around 2010. So at this point that it's coming out, it would be 2 years. And over the span of that time, we went through a handful of different musicians, different guitarists, bass player change, keyboardists, and like we just kind of moved people around until we finally got the right group of people that was able to get this complete sound that we wanted. So it took about 2 years.
Wow. So did everybody have their own creative input, or was the direction pretty much left to one person?
No, well, there was a general idea of how I kind of had a vision of how I wanted it to be done, but everybody brought their own style to the table, and we went back and forth over everything, and we all came to pretty much a consensus and agreed that the way it came out was how we all wanted it to be. And so it had a real group dynamic. We were always talking about it, listening to it, telling people to redo it, or that it could sound better, or we weren't really feeling it. So I really feel that it was a group effort.
Everybody working as one.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
dope.
Definitely.
So, in your previous release, Strictly Sinatra, you touched upon themes of corruption, the media, everyday struggle, everyday life, and love. And with this album, how have those messages translated into collaboration?
Well, I mean, the same themes really run through all my music. A couple of these songs I actually released before Strictly Sinatra. And so when I went into making Strictly Sinatra, I already had those kind of intentions and those feelings and that kind of message that I wanted to bring about my life and real life. So collaboration is kind of just an extension of all of that coming to like a point where I put songs out from the original Shneakiness EP, now with the live band. Let It Go, which came off of the Strictly Sinatra mixtape, is now on the album with the live band. So it's really like a continuation of that same overall message that I'm really trying to spread with all my music.
That's awesome. But this time with the band, like, behind you.
The original sound that I wanted to have, the live band being able to back me, hearing the guitars and the bass, like all of that coming together and being able to put out my voice on top of that, which, that's always how I envisioned it.
This album has taken a totally different direction than Strictly Sinatra now that you have the Low Skies behind you. But how do you feel that this album separates you from what everybody's putting out in the current state of music right now?
Well, I think we're in a digital age right now, and I say that with a smile on my face because I really do appreciate electronic music and house music, and a lot of these beats that are coming out on the radio right now are pretty tight, but I really feel like we're trying to throw it back to a time when music was made by real musicians coming together with real instruments and sitting down in a room together and like going back and forth, as opposed to like one person making something that they feel is marketable and then paying these people that are already known to get on it and sell it. It's just a whole different process that we went through in comparison. And I think the sounds that you hear and the music really shows that it's just a whole different thing than what's actually out right now. And I think that was our intention, to kind of like, it was a throwback.
To bring the culture back in music. Yeah.
Bring back culture, bring back, like lyrical content that makes sense, that's talking about, the state of life as it is, from my point of view, from a world point of view, like a lot of things that are absent right now.
Yeah, this album is easily relatable to anyone going through you know, like we said, the messages in your music, from like corruption to love and just the everyday struggle of life. And that's something artists don't really talk about these days, because everybody's just focused on the same themes of just partying and drugs and sex and whatever it may be. But this album, you took a totally different direction with it, and
no, I definitely think it's
awesome.
It's less materialistic for sure.
It's a lot more relatable.
It's
for
more
sure.
real world, and like while I do, you know, drop hints of sex or drugs, like because that is something that's really happening. And like you said, you know, it's really going on, and like I'm not trying to shun that or talk down on it, but I know that there's more to life, and there's more that people could be talking about, and there's more of a message of like people that need to wake up and see what's really happening in the world around them, instead of like in this fantasy world that a lot of us, including myself, sometimes tend to live in, you know, most of the time.
So as an MC, what would you call yourself? A rapper or a
I like to prefer myself as a lyricist. Because I've always written since the time I was old enough to write. I've always written things, and I've always tried to write and be a singer-songwriter, or like try to make my own music from the beginning. I just never really had the patience or the talent, and you know, I realized that there's other ways to do it by bringing people together who can do what you can't.
You definitely bring the hip hop in your lyrics, even though your music, you know, you're using live instruments, and the album is mostly like a rock alternative feel.
It has that feel because that's really what I'm influenced by, but my lyricism really comes from like a really seated hip hop feel. Like that's where I got my rhythms from, and my, you know, my wordplay, and the way I conceptualize things, you know, growing up listening to like these really badass MCs who talked about shit that I was able to relate to, shit that was going on in my life with, you know, bad grades or drugs or dropouts or, you know, people dying. Like that's the kind of shit that I like talking about, that real life shit. Like the shit that actually goes on when you hear something and you could be like, damn, I know someone, or I went through that, or like this makes so much sense, instead of like this. I feel like everything else is trying to push you a message or trying to feed you a lifestyle, and I'm just trying to more like just be the observer and just like commentate on the life how I see it, as opposed to like telling you the life that you should be living, you know.